Hello, everyone, and welcome to this presentation. My name is Leticia, and I'm a member of FORRT, the Framework for Open and Reproducible Research Training. On behalf of the FORRT community, I'm delighted to be here today and have the opportunity to introduce you to FORRT and to discuss its initiatives with you. So to start this presentation, I would like to provide you with a little bit of the context in which FORRT was formed. So although the scientific community has known the importance of research transparency for hundreds of years, we all have observed that open scholarship practices have received renewed attention in the last decade in light of the publication of implausible findings, admissions of questionable research practices, and prominent failures to replicate scientific results. And although the credibility revolution really started in psychology, it rapidly expanded into other fields, and we also saw in other fields similar and worryingly low rates of reproducibility and replicability. So in this scenario, many transparency-themed initiatives have been formed in different fields and academic disciplines with the hope to change the academic world for the better. However, despite considerable progress towards the adoption of open scholarship practices by researchers in many academic disciplines, the teaching of open and reproducible scholarship has received comparatively little attention. This means that although some researchers have embraced and adopted open scholarship practices in their own labs, in their own research, there appears to be much less systematic incorporation of open scholarship practices into higher education. And as a result, it is still very common that graduate and undergraduate students finish their studies without having heard about what open scholarship is. So the Center for Open Science, whose mission is to increase openness, integrity, and reproducibility of research, has proposed 3 guiding principles to steer science towards scientific utopia. These principles are, first, opening scientific communication; second, restructuring incentives to promote better scientific practices; and third, crowdsourcing science to promote large-scale collaboration and accelerate scientific progress. So at FORRT, we suggest that a 4th guiding principle is necessary to steer scholarship towards scientific utopia. The principle that we are proposing here is the one of familiarizing students, the future consumers and practitioners of science, with the intricacies of open scholarship. And in an effort to support the integration of the open scholarship movement into higher education, we propose FORRT. So what is FORRT? FORRT is an organization that started in 2018 in discussions of the Society for Improvement of Psychological Science. And we are happy that in the last 3 years, the organization has profoundly increased. And today we count with the contribution of more than 150 scholars and educators in many different fields, such as psychology, neuroscience, communication science, linguistics, medicine, economics, computer science, philosophy, political science, among many others. So FORRT's main goal is to build, together with educators, a path towards the incremental adoption of principled teaching and mentoring practices. We also aim to generate a conversation about the ethics and social impact of a higher education pedagogy that emphasizes openness, epistemic uncertainty, and research credibility. Finally, FORRT also responds to a call to consider open scholarship and inclusive scholarship. So to this end, we try to promote a reflection about the perceived importance of different academic activities. So think, for example, of how research tends to be overvalued to the detriment of teaching. And we also try to advocate for greater institutional recognition of educational resources. In today's talk, I would like to mainly introduce you to FORRT. And to do that, I would like to first talk about why we think integrating open scholarship into higher education is important. I'll then talk about what we call principled teaching and mentoring, and the benefits of open and reproducible research training. I will then move to what are the barriers that we encounter for this integration of open scholarship into education. And finally, I would like to show you some of the products of FORRT, some of the pedagogies and teaching materials that we have proposed to try to reduce the barriers for the integration of open scholarship into higher education. So to talk about the need for integration, it is important that we ask ourselves the following question. If science is a process of knowledge production, then is science education best expressed as teaching students the process or as teaching them the knowledge itself? I invite each one of you to think about what you think for yourself is the answer of this question. At FORRT, we believe that the answer is that if we teach the accumulated knowledge, then we are not actually teaching students science. Rather, we are teaching them science products. And we are, in this process, misleading them by substituting the teaching of scientific facts as if we were teaching science itself. So what we propose is what we call principle education, which is the principle that we should teach the facts of science relative to the process by which those facts are acquired. And given the credibility revolution, we believe that teaching the process of science should, of course, encompass also teaching the principles of open scholarship, such as the importance of openness, transparency, and reproducibility and replicability. So at this point, I think we might wonder, so what are the benefits of open and reproducible research training? We believe we can identify at least 3 benefits, which I show you here. First, open scholarship and teaching open scholarship to students benefits science. So teaching students open practices increases the chances that the future generation of researchers will not only value and understand, but also apply open practices into their own work. So teaching students open scholarship helps to ensure that open practices become the future research norm. Second, given that the majority of higher education students will not pursue an academic career, higher education presents a valuable and perhaps the last yet best opportunity to formally teach prospective consumers of research how scientific research is conducted in an open and transparent manner. And in this way, we are also teaching these future consumers of science how to evaluate research critically. So in short, teaching open and reproducible research to students also benefits future consumers of science. And finally, a commonly overlooked benefit of teaching students open and reproducible research is that open scholarship supports social justice. The current model of scientific production and educational practices contributes to reproduce global inequalities. So when we create the conditions for knowledge to become a public good, which is accessible to all members of society, we are helping to mitigate inequalities surrounding the access, learning, and production of scientific context. There is also an important point to be made about the democratization of the knowledge about open scholarship. So we believe that by integrating open scholarship into higher education, into curriculum, we avoid that open scholarship becomes part of the written curriculum, and which further increases inequality. Think, for example, if one student has access to knowledge about open scholarship because his mentor or his teachers already adopt open scholarship, while many other students might not have access to the same knowledge. So at this point, we might be asking ourselves, so if integrating open scholarship into higher education has so much value and so many benefits, why are we not seeing a more overspread integration of open scholarship into teaching and mentoring? And here we see at least 2 major barriers for a more overspread integration of open scholarship into higher education. First, there is the lack of top-down incentives. So given the pressure and incentives to publish, Some academics may be reluctant to change their research process as well as their teaching materials and their mentoring way to implement open scholarship practices out of a concern that it will slow down and otherwise hinder their productivity. A second common barrier and challenge is the lack of infrastructure. So at the moment, the responsibility for the adoption of open scholarship falls solely on academics who already have many other competing responsibilities. So it is hard to actually integrate open scholarship practices into teaching and mentoring, even if they wish to do it. FORRT aims to help educators to find existing initiatives that could be helpful to them. And also FORRT aims to develop teaching resources to aid in the integration of open scholarship into higher education. So in short, FORRT advocates for the creation and sharing of pedagogical resources that can reduce some of the burden on educators that are looking to incorporate open and reproducible research principles into their teaching. Now we are presenting 3 of FORRT products. So although FORRT has already many teaching resources that you can check out in our website, for the sake of time, we are presenting here three teaching resources that can help scholars and educators who wish to integrate open scholarship practices into their teaching. So the first resource that we would like to talk about is the FORRT Glossary. So as the landscape of open scholarship evolves, scholars and educators are constantly required to update their knowledge and vocabulary. So FORRT's Glossary is devised to be a nexus point for those wishing to learn about open scholarship. It is an ongoing initiative which aims to provide concise definitions of the most important and used open scholarship terminologies. A second goal is also to help to clarify terminologies, for example, where different terms are used interchangeably or with different associated meanings in different fields. The Glossary is a crowdsourced initiative, so it includes 110 contributors from the academic community who have defined more than 250 open scholarship terms. Each term in the Glossary is presented together with a brief definition and appropriate references. And whenever is the case, we also present potentially competing definitions for a term. We discussed the FORRT's Glossary initiative in a paper that is currently under review. And of course, as I mentioned, it is an ongoing initiative. So the end goal is to continue to update this glossary with new definitions, new terms, and etc. The second initiative that we would like to talk about here is FORRT summaries. So to help those wishing to get familiar or stay up to date with the open scholarship literature and to reduce the burden on educators who are starting to get familiar with this ever-increasing literature, FORRT community has prepared over 200 summaries of academic articles related to varied topics on open and reproducible research practices. Every summary contains the article's abstract, the main takeaways, direct quotes when relevant, and suggestions of articles on similar topics to help the reader to get a knowledge of how the literature relates, so how one academic paper relates to another. And the quality of the summaries is ensured by a peer review process that we established. So every FORRT summary is actually made by one FORRT member and then revised by 2 other independent individuals who also read the original source and check the quality of the summary produced. As the Glossary, FORRT summaries are, of course, also an ongoing initiative. We are discussing this initiative in a paper that is currently in preparation. And of course, we also aim to keep updating the FORRT summaries as the literature on open scholarship keeps growing. Finally, we would like to talk about FORRT's lessons plans. So despite the growing awareness of the benefits of training in open scholarship methods within research practices, there remains a lack of systematic incorporation of open scholarship into education. And while many pedagogical resources are regularly developed for this purpose, they often are not openly and actively shared with the wider community. So this leaves educators who want to integrate open scholarship into their teaching materials having to constantly reinvent the wheel. So to support educators aiming to bridge this gap, the FORRT community set out to produce an open educational resource drawing from experts, interest parties, and stakeholders to produce evidence-based, high-quality lesson plans and activities available to teaching faculty. So we have so far produced 9 evidence-based, high-quality lesson plans and almost 60 class activities that can be incorporated into taught courses. Each lesson plan was categorized based on theme, learning outcome, activity length, and method of delivery to facilitate their adoption and implementation in ongoing courses. We discussed this initiative in a paper that has been recently accepted, and we are happy to share it with the community soon. So we are coming now to the end of this talk, and I would like to conclude by saying that FORRT has many other initiatives, so please make sure to check our website if you are interested in discovering them. And yeah, also follow us on Twitter for more updates. In addition, I would like to emphasize here that we always welcome and appreciate new members at any career stage and from any discipline who are interested in open scholarship. So if this presentation has caught your interest and attention, please join our community in our Slack channel. We would be happy to have you. Thank you very much for your attention. And if there are any questions, please feel free to email us. Thank you very much.